everyone. Welcome back. We are going to be having a little discussion on um, some of my experiences in grad school. And we are going to be we'll be discussing what my life was like when it came into grad school during COVID. Now, a lot of people wonder, where should I do grad school? And especially when you're looking at going into grad school, you're looking at that next step when you go from your bachelor's. Now, there's always the big picture I want to put out there is that when you're getting your bachelor's degree, or it's going to be your choice to go to college, and it's going to be your choice to go to grad school. So if it's something that you really want to do, I would say grad school is a great opportunity for those who want to do it. And that is something I kind of want to discuss in this video, but I also want to discuss how my experience was, especially because I ended up coming into grad school right when COVID was starting, and then right at the end is when I finished. So there was a little bit of a weird shift, which made my grad school experience a lot more different than you would see as a normal one. So, but that's the first thing I want to get across today, is that your experience is going to be what you choose to do with it, what you choose to basically have with the entirety of it. And so yeah, if you are interested in grad school, and if you have questions about it, feel free to leave in the comments below. I do want to keep that open for those, and maybe it will spark another video where I discuss a little bit further. But this one is kind of the focus of how mine was a little bit more different. So, started out off, yes, it was really my senior or the final year of my bachelor's degree when COVID hit. And which sent the last half of my, it was into the third semester, and then we had the fourth semester. And it was it was the last semester of my stuff, the third and fourth quarter is what I'm in. And I was a community advisor at the time, so I was helping with resident assistants and them being in the dorm rooms. And turns out we get the notification that people are going to be sent back from spring break. They have to get all of their things. They have to completely move out. Y'all will have to move out too. Everybody's going home, and every class that you have is a work from home. And of course, that started that portion, and then it was kind of okay, what next? What to do? And I decided, okay, I'm going to go to grad school and get my master's. It seems like a good step for me to go, and maybe it'll help further things along, since I really don't know exactly what I want to do. So I go in and I get accepted to my the grad school I went to, and it starts out definitely a bit odd because my degree was in the science field, and a lot of the science and technology people, and usually it was the science and technology, some of the history and archaeology majors as well, but a lot of their your task for it was field work, so you had to be out in the field. And so that's where the first start of my oh, this is a bit odd begins. And so field work, most of the time you just go out to the field, and for what I was doing was just sampling groundwater, which meant that I went to a well and I got the little spigot and started sampling water and started looking at the chemistry, doing all that sort of stuff. And it wasn't until the start of this, to me that is normal. For what I had to go through though was a bit odd, because going out in the field meant, yes, you're wearing a shirt that has, this company or the university's logo on it. You had this stuff to get ready, but I also had to bring a mask. And so even sampling, we were outside. So there wasn't too much of a cause of concern for, COVID spreading. But if we had small well houses where we were pretty tight together, we still had to wear a mask because that was like our school's policy. And at the time, this is like before school has even started, I've already started sampling for my thesis. So I'm doing that, and then school begins. And we get told that basically everything's going to be online. So what was going to be the like grad school welcome breakfast, we didn't get to do because of COVID. We had like a ceremony, we went on Zoom, and it was just kind of like, welcome, glad you're here, see ya. Like, turn your cameras on so we can see who you are and see ya type of thing. And then all of my classes were all online too. So you had my environmental class, or my water seminar class was also online. And so we're sitting here, and you're kind of sitting in your room listening to the teachers talk. And most of them, especially in grad school, you had to have your camera on because it was that kind of connection that they wanted. Because at least in undergrad, you're in a class of 20 or more people, unless it's very specific. It's like 20 or more people. So a lot of the times the professor doesn't really care that much. In grad school, my biggest class was maybe 10 or 15. A lot of my classes were on average between 7 to 10. And then some of them, like my water seminar class, was 4. And that's including me. And so we had those classes where, you had to have the camera on, and it was basically like if you had to step out to go to the bathroom, or, you had to step out for like a phone call or something happened, you could turn the camera off then, but it was basically understood that you had to keep it on. And so that was kind of the odd part of grad school, because it didn't start out with like going to class. It was what I'm doing right now, turn on the computer, all right, listen to a lecture, and there we go. And some of these classes did have field opportunities in them. Like my hydrology class was one of those that you had to go out in the field with it. So we'd have the class like this where you're talking, and like I'm talking to you, talking to the teacher. The next class we could be outside, but we all have to have our mask on because it's a class setting, and they have to have a mask on. And so there was that sort of stuff that happened, and they had to change certain things around it, because while you had the breakfast for the grad students, a lot of the grad student events didn't happen because of COVID. And by the second year that I was there is when they started to kind of whittle it away. Specifically, like my geochemistry class, we met in person. We actually met in person, didn't have to wear a mask. We could, as long as we were all like, the classroom was a big classroom. There's at least like 20 seats in there, but there was only like 10 of us taking the class. So we all had to alternate on seats. So we were at least that 6-foot distance. And that's how a couple of my other classes decided to stay online, because they didn't want to deal with like this, to deal with like trying to separate everybody and keep the 6-foot distance. My class where I learned Python, there was only like, I think, another 10 of us in there, and it was like a huge computer lab. So we just kind of alternated on rows, and we all had to sit like on the outside so the teacher could, like, if we had questions, he could get to us, but you alternated. So if there was like 2 seats up front and then the 2 seats behind, one would sit on the right, one would sit on the left, and then you had to diagonally go back. And so we had some of those classes, which was kind of that hybrid, what people would say was the hybrid shift between COVID and grad school. So that was also an odd time, because again, we were back in the classroom, but it wasn't exactly like being back in the classroom. I mean, if you compare my undergrad to grad school, it was still a bit different. Another thing was my comprehensive exams. So sometimes, I'm not entirely sure if it's for every major, but for at least the science majors, you have to go through a comprehensive exam, which means it's usually by the end of the first year, you have to have an exam based on everything you've learned this far. And it's an exam specifically for this person, aka me. And they would usually be in the classroom and you would take the test, and basically it would be set like an exam. With COVID, you couldn't really do that. So what they decided to do, what my advising team did, was like they put me in a small classroom where there was only like 4 or 5 seats in there, put me in there and just said, take your test and then come to X classroom to give us the paper back so we can grade it. But we won't be in the room with you because of this. And then I think I had to keep my stuff, like I had my desk, which was like in the center of the room. So if like this was my desk, then like where my pillow is over here is where like my backpack had to stay. So then like it wasn't the like I'm looking up the answers type of stuff. So that was a bit different. And they even told me when I went in for the comprehensive exams that it's not normal, that this isn't normally how they are done. Then the next thing was my thesis. Out of all of this, you got all the classes going on, and I'm still writing my thesis. I come into the office a few times to work on said thesis and meet with my advisor. And for most of this, the first part of being in the office for me was the whole wearing a mask, even because we were all close to each other. By the second year, we could take those off. And so working on this thesis in the office, and I'm sitting there with my advisor and we're talking, and I get to the final call. Well, we have the brown bag, which is that it's kind of like a thesis proposal, basically saying, this is what I've done so far, and this is what I'm looking into. Here's my information, ask me questions. And that part was privately, specifically for the department. Nobody else really was invited to go to that one, so it stayed within the department walls, which at that point, COVID was starting to whittle out, so we didn't have to wear masks too much. Some, it was just kind of recommended if you were one of those who could be critically affected by COVID. And so I did my presentation, and then the thesis came around, and that's where they did something where COVID actually brought a positive to, which was allowing to do your thesis hybrid. Now, I was still required to, well, I wasn't even required to be in person to talk to people. They allowed me to choose whether I wanted to do my thesis in person, which would basically, again, come back to where it's only the department, or I could do my thesis on the computer from home, which would allow the department to show up, but also my parents, my sister, my grandparents showed up, and then I had like the company that I worked for this thesis, they showed up. And it was all because I was allowed to be online. And it wasn't kind of like, they were like, well, since COVID came around and we have this opportunity to do both, you can choose whether you want to do both, be in person or there, to just do it online, or just to do it in person, but you would be limited. And my advisor was actually one of the ones who recommended me to either do a hybrid or to do from home, because the company had never really been invited to a lot of the theses before. So I ended up saying, sure, why not? I'll do it. And that's when I actually it was the company, and they ended up asking a question in my thesis, being like, hey, you're defending your thesis. What do you think about this? And I'm like, oh, hey, I actually know the answer to that. And my actual defense for my thesis, the only question I had was like, hypothetically, what do you think about this, this, and this? But it wasn't like, they didn't ask me too many questions because I covered a lot of it in the presentation itself. So, COVID had like a lot of issues where there was times in grad school where I didn't get to do as much as I wanted to. The field work was like the top favorite thing I was doing, but the actual grad school events where it was like the breakfast or meeting with the advisors and like a luncheon or to be commemorated by the end of it, like a lot of that stuff I didn't get to do because of what happened with COVID. But then the positives were I was able to actually invite my parents, my sister, my grandma, all to my thesis defense for them to hear me like present my information out there, and then to turn around and just, you know, get to turn around and put my like stole on and graduate. So there was still a little bit of a positive even all after all of that. But if you guys want to, I can go more into like the grad school idea and the grad school like mentality behind it, and kind of take away from where it was in COVID, but focus more on it as a whole. I could do that as another video. If that sounds good, feel free to leave a like so I can know that this was interesting enough for you to want to see more. And yeah, that is the end of my little spiel of this. And I will see you guys in the next episode or video of whatever I'm doing. Okay, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Bye!